Hi you guys, it's Charlie aka Miss Charlotte Zay, and welcome back to the return of the Sex and the City series book reading. And normally I would start the show off with the song, but I cannot seem to find the CD for a reason. So here I go. Da 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 do 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 da 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 do 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 da 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 do 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 da 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 do 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 da 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 I tried, okay? I tried to mock the actual song. Since I can't find the CD, I had to compromise. So, here we go. So, it's been a few weeks before I've actually done the series. It's because of it just being the Thanksgiving season and just getting back to work and everything. Haven't really had the chance nor feel like reading it. But here I am again, you guys, to do a few chapters here tonight. So, out of the fabulous book, Sex and the City, we last left off on chapter 13, which was Tales of the Pretty. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to chapter 14. And if you guys are not caught up, honestly, I'm not caught up. So go back on my videos here in the Sex and the City series and take a look at where we left off. And you have to listen to the chapters if you have not. So here we are on chapter 14, which is Portrait of a Bulgy Underwear Model. The bone pops out of his giant billboard. There's like all this music going on in the background. Okay. A door opens at the top of the stairs, and the bone, an underwear model and budding actor, stands still. Oh God, all these big ass words. Stands still, halted in the doorway of his apartment. One arm is up and he's leaning against the doorframe, and his dark brown hair is falling in his face, and he's laughing as he watches you trudge breathless up the stairs. You're always on the go, he says. Like all he wants to do is lie around in bed all day. You remember what his friend, screenwriter Stanford Blatch, keeps telling you? The bone looks like he travels with his own lightning director. And then it's too much. You have to look away. The bone is the human equivalent of a saddle or a sable coat, Stanford says. Stanford has been bugging you a lot about the bone lately. The phone rings and you pick it up and it's Stanford. Who's sexier, the bone or Keanu Reeves? You sigh. You know who the bone is and don't really care. You say, the bone? Maybe it's partly out of guilt. You know that you should know who he is. He's that guy. Really? He's that guy who was splashed, muscled, nearly naked on that giant billboard in Times Square. And he was all over the buses. You never go to Times Square and you don't pay attention to buses except when they're about to hit you. But Stanford keeps working on you. The Bone and I were walking by his billboard the other day. He says, and the Bone wanted to get a piece of it to put in his apartment, like maybe his nose. But I told him he should take the bulge in his pants. That way, when women ask how big he is, he could say 14 feet. The Bone did the cutest thing today, Stanford says. He tried to take me out to dinner. He said, Stanford, you've done so much for me. I want to do something for you. I said, don't be silly. But you know, he is the only person who's ever offered to take me out to dinner in my whole life. Can you believe anyone that is beautiful is that nice? You agreed to meet the Bone. You're going to be a star. The first time you meet the Bone at Brewery Bar with Stanford at his side, you want to hate him. He's 22, a model, et cetera. You pretty much sense that he wants to hate you, too. Is he going to really be stupid? Besides, you don't think sex symbols are ever really sexy in person. The last one you met reminded you of a worm, literally, but not this one. It's not exactly what he appears to be. I have different personalities with different people, he says. Then you lose him in the crowd. About 2 months later, you're at the model's birthday party at Baracco, and you run into the Bone. He's standing across the room, leaning against the bar, and he's smiling at you. He waves. You go over. He keeps hugging you, and the photographers keep taking your picture. Then you somehow end up sitting across the table from him. You and your friend are having this huge, never-ending heated argument. The Bone keeps leaning over and asking if you're okay, and you say yes, thinking he doesn't understand that you and your friend always talk to each other that way. Stanford, who knows everyone in Hollywood, sends the Bone out to LA to go on auditions for small parts in movies. He leaves Stanford a message. Everyone's talking about you, he says. You are so great. You're going to be a star. Have I told you that enough times yet? You're a star. You're a star. You're a star. Stanford is laughing. He's imitating me, he says. You and the Bone get drunk at Brewery Bar. An easy A. The Bone lives in a tiny studio that has white everything. White curtains, white sheets, white comforter, white chaise. When you're in the bathroom, you look to see if he uses special cosmetics. He doesn't. The Bone grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. His father was a teacher. His mother was a school nurse. In high school, the Bone didn't hang out with the cool kids. He used to make straight A's and tutor younger children after school. They all looked up to him. The Bone never thought about becoming a model, but when he was in 8th grade, he was voted best-looking guy. He secretly wanted to do something exciting, like being a detective. He went to the University of Iowa and studied literature for 2 years. It was what his father wanted. One of his teachers was young and good-looking, and when we called the Bone in for a meeting, he sat next to him and put his hand on the Bone's leg. He slid his hand up to the bulge in the Bone's pants. This could be an easy A for you, he said. The Bone never went back to his class. 3 months later, he dropped out of college. Recently, someone's been calling the Bone's apartment and leaving messages that are only music. At first, he listened to the songs because he kept thinking the music was going to stop, and one of his friends would start talking. Now he listens to the songs to see if there's a clue. I think it's a man, he says. An Iowa boyhood. You're lying on the bed with the Bone, like you're both 12, lying on your stomach and hanging your legs over the side, and you say, tell me a story. He says, the story I'm thinking about the most lately is my ex-girlfriend. It was the summer of 1986, and the Bone was 14. It was one of those summer days in Iowa when the sky is clear and the corn in the field is so green. And the whole summer, when you drive around in the car with your friends, you see the corn grow. The Bone and his family went to the state fair. The Bone was walking through the livestock exhibit with his friend when he saw her. She was brushing a baby heather, and he grabbed his friend's arm and he said, that's going to be my wife. He didn't see her again for a whole year. Then, one evening, he was at one of those youth dances that they have in small towns to keep the teens out of trouble, and she was there. He fooled around with her on Christmas Eve. Then I got totally dumped, he says. It really hurt in a weird way. A year and a half later, when she decided she wanted him, he didn't give in. Even though I wanted to be with him so bad, he says. Then one day I gave in. The Bone went out with her on and off for a few years. She's a computer programmer in Iowa City, but they still talk. Maybe he'll marry her someday. He grins, and when he does, his nose wrinkles at the top. I might, he says. I always think it's such a beautiful story in my head. It blows my mind away. The Bone is always saying that he could move back to Iowa and have kids and be a cop, Stanford says. It's adorable, as long as he doesn't really do it. You say, then feel cynical for having said it. I know I'm neurotic. You and the Bone are hungry, so you go to Bagels R Us at 6 in the evening on a Sunday. 2 female cops sit in the corner smoking. People are wearing dirty sweat clothes. The Bone eats half of your ham and cheese sandwich. I could eat 4 of these sandwiches, he says, but I won't. If I eat a hamburger, I'll feel so guilty afterward. The Bone cares about the way he looks. I change my clothes about 5 times a day, he says. Who doesn't look in the mirror about 100 times before they go out? I go back and forth between the 2 mirrors in my apartment like I'm going to look different in each one. It's like, yeah, I look good in this mirror. Let me see if I look good in the other. Doesn't everyone do that? Sometimes I get so distracted, the bone says. My thoughts get so scattered in my head. It's jumbled and it doesn't make sense. What's distracting you now, you ask? Your nose? Thanks a lot, I hate my nose. I hate my nose too, he says. It's too big, but I think it depends on my hair. The other day, Stanford said, I like your hair like that. It's full, it makes your nose look smaller. You both crack up. Back on the street, the bone nudges you. They spelled puppies wrong, he says. You look. A man in overalls is standing next to a giant gray mastiff and holding a cardboard sign that says, puppies for sale. Huh? The man says. There's a dirty red and white truck parked behind him. Puppies. You spelled it wrong, the bone says. The man looks at the sign and grins. Hey, they're selling the same puppies up the street for $200 instead of $2,000, the bone says, and the man laughs. Later, you're sitting on the edge of the bed with your head in your hand staring at the bone, who's lying in the bed with one hand in the waistband of his jeans. 1 minute, I could be walking down the street totally cool, and the next minute I'm depressed for no reason, he says. I know I'm neurotic. I see it, I feel it, I'm self-analytical, self-critical, self-conscious. I'm very aware of everything I say. Then the bone says, before I say something wrong, I say it in my head first, so it doesn't come out wrong. Doesn't that kind of seem like a waste of time? You ask. It only takes a second. He pauses. If I'm out and a stranger comes up to me and asks me if I'm a model, I say no, I'm a student. And the bone laughs. They lose interest, he says, looking at you like he can't believe you didn't know that. Stanford calls you up. The bone left me the cutest message. He says, and he plays it. Stanny, did you die? Are you dead? You must be dead because you're not answering my phone. Laughing. Call me later. Ivana Trump's butler. You like hanging out with the bone in his apartment. It reminds you of when you were 16 in your own small town in Connecticut, and you used to hang out with this guy who really beautiful, and you'd smoke pot and your parents would think you were off riding your horse. They'd never know the truth. You look out his window at the sunlight on the backs of tatty little brownstones. I've wanted to have kids ever since I was a kid, Bone says. My dream. But that was before all this stuff happened to the bone. Before now. A couple of weeks ago, the bone got offered a second lead in an ensemble movie starring all the cool young Hollywood actors. He went to a party and accidentally ended up going home with one of the other actors' girlfriends, a new supermodel. The actor threatened to kill the bone and the supermodel, and she and the bone temporarily fled the city. Only Stanford knows where they are. Stanford calls and says he's been on the phone constantly. Hard Copy offered the bone money to appear, and Stanford said to them, Who do you think he is? Ivana Trump's butler? The bone says, I just don't believe the bullshit. It's still me. I haven't changed. People are always telling me, don't ever change. What am I going to change into? An egomaniac? A prick? An asshole? I know myself really well. What do I want to change into? Why are you laughing, he asks. I'm not laughing. You say, I'm crying. Stanford says, have you ever noticed how the bone has no scent whatsoever? Alright, you guys, that was the end of chapter 14. Very interesting chapter. Stay tuned on the next video. We're going to go ahead and start with chapter 15. Holla back.